Welcome to Coffee and Catastrophe with Brent and Gabi. Today, I have a very special guest with me, so Gabi is out on this one. It's a very interesting topic that I have rarely talked about with other people, only because the people that I have experienced it with are the only ones that have, gone through it as well. With me, it's really hard to find a place to start. I believe that now that in my old age, I'm 31 years old now, it gets harder and harder to look on the past because the fondness grows more as more time passes. There is one particular part of my life that I have such fondness for, and it is when I was between the ages of 18 to 21. There was this one special place that I, along with all my other friends we would just go to every single day, and that's where we really ironed out our souls and our pretty much our youth at that point. I have a very special guest with me today. His name is Joe. He has been my closest friend for about 25 years now, and Joe and I have been through pretty much everything together, and this topic was something that we were really passionate about, and every summer we reminisce about it and all of these times. So I think it's really important to have a period of time in your life where you are just able to fuck around and just be a kid and be your age. And there was no better time than when we did that right after we graduated high school, up until the point where we turned 21. So, Joe, how you doing today, man?
Hey there, good to be here. I agree with you, and it is a very special place that we had. And, a lot of people, when they talk about, that special time in their lives, in their youth, you think of being a child, carefree. But I think for us, this particular time was more, as young adults. Not children, when we first get that initial taste of freedom to where it's not just, you have no cares or worries in the world, but rather that the world is like your oyster and the potential is unlimited because you're just now coming into your own person. And that makes it such a special time, such an impactful time too. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about.
Definitely, because we got a taste of adulthood as soon as we turned 18 because the law says that we were recognized as adults. So we didn't have to have our parents' permission for anything legally at that point in time. So as soon as we graduated high school, I've made this metaphor before on earlier episodes of the podcast, but it's really like swimming on the beach, and from when you're born until you're 18, you're swimming right before the buoy. Like, that whole buoy rope ends, and then as soon as you're an adult, it's just at that area beyond that.
Right.
So we really got a chance to explore that with a really, diverse and colorful group of characters. But it's really hard to just go back and describe and explain how all of this happened. So let's start from the very beginning. As soon as we graduated high school, what started this group?
Well, it was actually a little bit before high school ended. A mutual friend of ours, you remember Chris Prosser?
Yes.
He had a friend and his name was Jonas, and everybody knew who Jonas was in high school because he was very loud and he was almost like notorious, let's say. Not famous, not popular. He was notorious. So I knew who he was, but I never really talked to him. Most people just kind of avoid him because he was kind of loud and stuff. And anyway, I was hanging out with my friend Chris, and Jonas was there. And so I had met Jonas that day, and I think something happened, and we just became super, like the connection was almost instantaneous. And I felt a bond with him. I think over the next couple months, we became super close friends. Like, you could say best friends. And that's where all this started. It all started with my friendship with Jonas, and basically what we would do is, again, this is at the cusp of adulthood, coming on being an adult. Of course, the first thing we did was, go out and buy a bunch of cigarettes, and we had to hide it from our parents, so we would walk around his neighborhood, and find different spots we could kind of relax and just talk and smoke our cigarettes, and that's really how it all started. And it became, something like a ritual every night. I remember we called it, we had a name for it. It was like commencing the ceremony. I would come over and we would, light up a cigarette and we would walk around the neighborhood and visit these different spots. And our favorite spot was called Moon, and that was like It was a nice little, just I'm trying to describe it here. There was a big tree in the middle with like a brick wall around it, just like stones, maybe about 2 feet high. There was benches on each side, and that wall we used to call pee wall, actually, because everybody used to pee on it, and we used to litter all of our litter in the bushes, and these fantastic landscapers would clean it all up every week.
Almost on a daily basis at one point.
Oh yeah, and all our cigarette butts too, I'm sure. And so yeah, it grew from that, just kind of messing around, getting away from our parents, being a little rebellious with the smoking maybe. And then it became all about just talking about life. And we would just get, at that age, you're figuring things out, and we would philosophize and just talk for hours and hours and hours. So as our friendship grew, I started introducing more of my friends to Jonas and what we were doing. And that's when, Brent came in and our friend Adam came in. And that's when it really started off as what we came to call the family. We literally called it the family, and it was a group of us friends who got together and, just fucked around. We all felt very connected and like we were part of something, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. It was something bigger that we were a part of the more time went along. So I remember like my first introduction to Jonas. I actually hated Jonas in high school because he would actually pass me by in the hallways and he would punch me as hard as he could in the stomach. But that's like kind of how he fucked with you. It was weird because it wasn't like he was a bully.
Right.
He just, like, I think the more he fucked with you, the more he kind of liked you. But there were some people that he did kind of torture just for the fun of it. But I think deep down, like, I don't think that he hated me. But he knew that I was friends with you. So he'd just come up to me and he just had this very strong presence. So you could feel him, like, in the room. He's one of those guys where he walks in the room. He's almost like a celebrity at that point. And his notoriousness because he was very extroverted, and he was able to just mingle his way into pretty much any group or any situation and be outrageous. So I remember me and you were friends, and we hung out, pretty much like our entire lives. Like we bonded over video games and Magic cards and Pokemon cards and whatever it was during those periods of time. So right after high school, me and you still did hang out. And I remember going with you the first time to hang out with Jonas, and I was apprehensive at first because this was the guy that would just punch me in the stomach. I would have to like tighten up my abs just to brace the hit all the time. But then like that first day we hung out, I remember we went to the Gurney Mills Mall and we were just fucking around, and we were just like in a clothes store, and then Jonas put on this, I think it was a Superman shirt that was way too tight for him. But that was just a very fun day. And then later on that night, we went to Moon, that is located, it's in Haynesville. So picture a suburban area that has a lot of like townhomes and little like individual homes, and it's very much in the center of this subdivision. So Moon was this place where it was very quiet and it was like almost private property at this point. So
it's always nighttime too, usually when we went there.
Yeah, it's so rare seeing that place during the day. So
right.
Very much like you said, there was the tree that was surrounded by like a brick wall, and then in the cement pavement that was circling around the tree, there were benches to just sit and chill out. So it was kind of the median of, or like even like this anchor of that subdivision. And we would go around there at night, and that was within walking distance of Jonas's place. So I remember like the first night that we all went there to hang out, you guys were smoking cigarettes, and it was just very cool. And we were chilling out and we were just talking, just about life and about everything else in general. So at this point, I didn't really get to know Jonas that well until these times.
Let's give a real quick physical description of Jonas. So Jonas is Filipino, 100%. I would say he's about 5'8", 5'9". He's very stocky. He's got big arms. He's a strong guy, I would say.
Very strong.
So just to give you an idea, like he'll make it known right away, his presence when he meets you, because his handshake is without question the hardest handshake I've ever felt.
Same.
And it almost like puts you off at first, but then you realize he's dead serious and this is like a respect thing for him, and you have to just like squeeze hard back
just to survive the
Right.
handshake, or else like, it's like putting your hand in a vice grip,
Right.
And then he would just meet you, and then he had this he had a slight accent that was very much part. He's like, gentleman. He would come up to you and he would just shake your hand. He was very cordial, but if you didn't strengthen your grip like his was, you would probably have broken bones every single time. The only other person I've met in my life that had that much of a tight grip was my uncle. But even still, like, it was a very, sometimes he had very dry hands.
Oh yeah, and you'd feel every single.
Yeah. So it felt like an alligator's like armpit kind of squeezing the shit out of your hand.
And the high fives too. You remember though, if you want to get a high five from Jonas, be prepared, because it will hurt. Like he does. He throws a high five like he's trying to smack you in the face as hard as he can, except for it's on your hand.
It was a knockout punch haymaker style high five. Like I remember, like almost like sometimes like I would either feel the sting of the high five, like just on the skin of my hand, or I remember a few times I wasn't prepared, so my shoulder almost gave out as he would just like with all of his might, but he didn't even like try. That's just how strong and brooding of a force this fucking guy was.
Yeah, and he's a very interesting character because, like you said, he had this crazy side to him where he would do like outrageous things, and he just had no care or concern for social construct or people's opinions. But at the same time, you'd catch him in these moments where he was like one of the deepest, most ahead of the curve, mentally mature people I've ever met. And
I agree.
Looking back on it, he was like way ahead of us in terms of maturity. Looking back on some of those videos we shot and stuff.
Yes, we did document a lot of this footage, just little snippets of us hanging out and having fun and having these deep conversations. Jonas, it was really different with him because he was very wise, but he was also very wild at the same time. I've never seen that with any other person at the same time. It's almost like if you were to take just like a lion and then just like have the lion sit at the table.
Right.
But then like occasionally the lion will just bite your fucking head off, but it's a lion. But just like that with Jonas, he really didn't live within those confines of being I don't know if polite is the right word, because he still treated you like, a decent like guest if you were in his presence, but he just kind of didn't hold back anything that he said or did. But he was kind of like I don't know, you two were like the number 1 and 2 leaders of the group.
I would say if you want to say there was like a leader, definitely was always without question going to be Jonas, because it was kind of like his place, his subdivision. And at the end of the day, I may have, been like leader-esque, I guess, if you want to say that. We all knew, at the end of the day that Jonas was the main component that kept everybody together.
That's true.
And because when he left, we still had a group, but it wasn't the same. He left for a couple of years and then he came back.
Yeah, but for the first few years that we actually met this guy and were around him were some of the best times of our lives. I remember
I agree.
Once we started hanging out and going to Moon, we would go there at least after dark. So at least starting our day of our hangout at 9 p.m. almost every single day, so, especially in the summertime. So we would go there. I remember within walking distance of the subdivision, there was a 7-Eleven. So we would go there and we would stop off and pick up some Arizona green teas. And then we would walk back to Moon. I remember you would usually be like smoking cigarettes and just pounding the tea. We would go there and we'd have nice conversations. And then out in the distance, we would just see Jonas walking down the path. And you could usually hear him approaching because he always wore flip-flops. I don't think I've ever seen him wear shoes.
It could be January 15th. It could be negative 10 degrees and he's wearing flip-flops.
He's wearing flip-flops and you just hear that flip-da, 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 flip-da. And then you could hear, and you just see smoke, like just like this light smoke coming, like you can kind of see it reflected like in the moonlight. So you just knew Jonas was coming, and you see like the little orange wick of him like taking a hit from the cigarette in the distance. But
he made it look cool, didn't he?
He made it like, I never smoked. I was like, dude, I want to be as cool as that. Just watching him in the distance. And then he would approach us and he'd say, gentlemen, cripple our hands. And then we would just all start hanging out. And it wasn't that we had an agenda. every single night when we hung out. This was just the meeting place. Maybe we would say what's new. We would talk about a video game. If we had, a crush on someone, or if we like this was going on, we always just had that room to talk it out and walk around.
And that was what's so beautiful about it. And that's where it's really getting into the meat of it, is when we would just meet up every single day. And that was our like community. We would meet up around that time. And like you said, we'd work out all of our problems in life right there with each other. And then we'd just mess around the rest of the night. Sometimes we would go places. Sometimes we'd go back to Jonas's. Sometimes we'd just be outside talking, walking around, goofing around. And mind you, this was innocent fun. We were not doing anything illegal or drugs or alcohol or anything. It was just, I guess loitering would be the biggest crime we were committing. So
easily, if you were to define it. So Moon wasn't the reason why. Actually, why did we call it Moon, or why did you guys call it Moon?
Well, that goes back a long way, but it started really when we were first starting to, really get into each other's philosophy, because Jonas was he was raised strict Catholic, like a lot of Filipino, or not strict Catholic, but he's a very strict Christian background. Which a lot of Filipino families really instilled in their kids. So even to this day, he still, believes in that stuff. But back then, I kind of opened his mind to questioning things and to like bigger pictures, and that's where he really, I think, like, that's why he started respecting me so much, is because, like, man, this guy, he's got, he sees a different side of the coin or whatever. It was during that time when, we started to get real deep and stuff, and I think it was just a real reflective moment where I think we had decided at that day, it was like, man, I think we discovered, the secret to life, and it was just something that I couldn't explain to you, but it's like we looked at each other, and I was like, I kind of everything kind of makes sense right now. Some people have that experience when they're like taking psychedelic drugs or something like that, where everything kind of makes sense. Well, we had one of those moments, and the moon was a full moon, and we were at that location, and that's just what we called it from there on out. So
definitely a good name. And the crazy thing was the entire place illuminated in the moonlight.
Right, it did.
There was like this reflective like gravel within like the brick wall and even the cement surrounding it. So it almost was shiny just walking over there. And on those crisp, cool summer nights, the moonlight was always bouncing off of like the terrain that we were standing on.
There was no better feeling every night knowing that you're going to go there. And usually, normally somebody was always there. It was like somebody was always there waiting. And it turned out to be, I think at one point we weren't even calling each other and making plans. It was just like, all right, see you tomorrow,
Yeah, it was never any question. And I didn't have a cell phone then, but even still, I would call you, and we just knew that we would go over there.
Yeah, and it was so nice having that, just like I said, it was like that's when our day really started. You could have work all day, you could have nothing going on all day, but once 8, 9 o'clock hit and we met up, that was when like it really started for us, I think. And we were always out late. I remember at that time I had a part-time job and I was working, like 20 hours a week, so I could sleep in, and I could do that stuff. And yeah, it was such talk about carefree. We, all the perks of being an adult with all the freedom of being a child,
Definitely. For me, I didn't have a job then. I don't know. I really didn't have a job the first 3 years out of high school, and I was just kind of living comfortably, with just at home. I didn't really have too many responsibilities outside of the chores that, and the tasks that I was given by my parents. So I remember it wasn't uncommon for me to sleep until noon or even 2 a.m.
Or 2 p.m.
2 p.m.
Yeah,
so,
same here.
It was a lot easier to do that. I wasn't in a relationship. I just had my friends, and occasionally, I would do other things and hang out with other people. But like the main core group at that point in time was you and Jonas. And that's how we started out. And I remember along the way, outside of going to Moon, like we would explore other areas of the subdivision. So think of it as a big suburban, like there's a sidewalk on both sides of the street. Every single lawn is, kept up and cut nice. And was just a lot of like really nice walking paths, and it was very quiet at night. But there was a few other places that we discovered. So let's talk about some of like the names that we gave, some of the other things that we discovered there.
Okay, yeah. So I remember definitely like the cool thing was about that place is at nighttime everybody was in their houses for the most part, and we were basically the only ones out, so we kind of felt like we ran the place. That was what was so special. It was like our place at night. So we had explored the whole subdivision and stuff, and so the next place, we always stopped at pretty much every place every night, but we would always start out at Moon. Actually, if you want to get technical, it started out at Lighthouse. Now, Lighthouse was just a big light post next to Jonas's house where people would park their cars. That's all it was. But we called it Lighthouse. And then we go to Moon, or sometimes we just go directly to Moon. We just park over there and go to Moon. Then there was Gazebo, which was pretty uninspired because it was just a gazebo. But it was within, what would you say, like 20 yards of Moon? I mean, it's pretty close.
Yeah, it was very close. It was pretty much on the same lot.
Right. And then there was Park, just a park. It had a big soccer field, some swings, a bench. We would hang out there all the time on the swings and stuff, I remember. Just talking and stuff. Jonas took a shit on the slide once and wiped his ass with his underwear. So that was fun. I'll never forget that.
So
he's done that more than one place, but yeah.
Yeah. So before, see, it's really hard to introduce like the craziness, like in all the shit that Jonas has done,
Right.
because I don't know where to start.
Yeah. Well, I think so. Aside from Park, there was also Nature Walk, and I'll get to the craziness of Jonas in just a minute, but. So Nature Walk the subdivision's called Cranberry Lake, and the Lake Cranberry, there's a path around the whole lake, and you can walk around. That's connected to another subdivision. And in that subdivision, there's a place we called Charmise Gazebo. Now, Charmise Gazebo is pretty much the same as the other place, but we called it Charmise Gazebo because there was a Filipino girl named Charmise who we went to high school with. Now, this was when we were still in high school. Who lived there, who had the hots for Jonas big time. I think the last place that we used to hang out was called Airport, and that was kind of by the side of the road, and that was called Airport because we used to smoke weed over there. And, to get high, Airport, right?
I always thought because it looked like an airport because there was like a long gravel path that looked like a runway.
That was part of it too, yeah.
Okay, so because I know you guys would smoke weed back there, but I didn't know that was why you called it Airport, but it was so fitting.
Yeah, it worked out, yeah.
So all of this would happen almost every single night. Sometimes we would make our rounds. We would hit up every single place. Sometimes we would specifically hang out in one place rather than another. So nothing was really off limits. And of course, like the weather, permitting, we would just go inside. But I remember in the summer of 2005, we actually had a drought that summer, and it didn't rain, and most of the grass was dying, and there were sprinklers on everywhere. So we actually had really nice and dry weather. But whenever it did get to that point where we didn't want to stay outside, whether it was because of it was getting cold or what, we would just always make our way back to Jonas's basement and have quite a bit of fun there.
And Jonas was quite the character. He would really he was always looking for a laugh out of you, but at the same time, you could tell whatever he was doing because he was having fun. Now, Jonas, like you said, how do you begin with this? He was so extroverted to the point of, so I think we could do a whole podcast just about Jonas's penis. What would you say to that?
I would even say that he was a part of like the group,
right?
Like just like there was Jonas, and then there was Jonas's penis. Because I remember we all have a first time we saw Jonas's penis story.
Right. Yeah. Now, see, Jonas would take out his penis quite a bit, and it was like a running gag. I mean, it was just that was his like go-to move, I guess. Sometimes it would be to be funny. Sometimes it would be just because he's got to pee, and he would just we'd be standing in a circle outside, and he'd have his dick out for like a while, and you wouldn't even know until you just saw the piss start coming out.
Yeah, and he didn't even
splatter on the ground. Yeah,
he never even used his hands, and then you would just hear, and he'd be like, "Oh, really? Tell me more about that." And then you would just, psst, and then you would think, "Oh, we just all step back," and then he just put his dick away, and then he'd be like, "Oh, that's interesting."
And he always had a thing where he would everything was not a big. Oh, it's not a big deal. Not a big deal. He would like dry heave and nearly vomit. After having a cigarette or something. Like, dude, are you okay? He'd be like, no, just a little dry heave. Not a big deal.
So anybody being introduced to this for the first time, it's really shocking when you were there because I've never just seen a dick piss in front of me before. And literally, I think during those past 3 years, like 2005 to 2008, I have seen Jonas's penis more than my own because I only see mine when I go to the bathroom, which is 2 minutes at the most. There'd be sometimes he would just be butt fucking naked the entire time we're hanging out, even in public, even outside, just this naked Filipino kid walking around with his dick out, but it was normal. Like we would just talk to him like, yeah, dude, Marvel vs. Capcom, that's a really good game. And his dick is just out there.
Oh yeah. And it became like you could tell when Jonas was really comfortable because he would just be 100% naked. Like no shirt, no socks, nothing, just 100% naked. And that's when you knew he was really in his element.
Yeah. Like that was like his way of saying like that he liked you, is just like showing you his dick. As weird as that sound, but
and it was really some gay stuff too, but me and Brent have talked about this before. As gay as all this stuff was, not just it was there was an element to it that was very homosexual, and Jonas is the least homosexual person that I know. Like, he's not gay, but he would do all this gay stuff. And I know it sounds really confusing, but that was him.
Yeah, it was borderline. Like, he would probably have been part of the Me Too movement.
Right.
If the Me Too movement existed in 2005, because like what he would do is he'd be butt naked, and then sometimes he would just, like, with one hand, like, while you're talking to him, you didn't know it, he would just start slowly unzippering your zipper, and then he would just start, like, touching your penis. And you're like, wait, what the fuck is going on? And then you just, oh, no, keep talking. It was completely and he's naked while you're doing it. So it's hard to really say that this is gay because he transcended it.
Yeah, he transcended the gayness. I remember one time I fell asleep on his couch, and he literally was, like, pushing my balls and my penis with his foot for, like, a while before I woke up. And he thought it was the funniest thing ever, and I was so mad, man. But looking back on it, it was pretty funny. I mean, like you said, I mean, it was gay, but he transcended it somehow. He was so free and open about it. He just had no care in the world.
It was as if he was from a completely different culture, but no other. It was his own. So It was pretty much like his own rules, and we just had to abide by it. But it wasn't tyrannical. It was just so bizarre. But I guess at the end of the day, he did have a big heart. But goddamn, like I don't think I've ever seen him fully clothed, like just like with like shoes, pants. Maybe like when there was a wedding that we went to, but that was the only time I ever seen him with clothes on. Every other time after that, he always just had his shirt off. He was wearing sandals. Sometimes he just butt fucking naked. He would just start openly jerking off in front of everybody.
Oh yeah, that's one thing he would do. Yeah, I've seen him even. I remember one time it was. And he crosses the line between, like, whether you don't know if he's being serious or if he's joking. And at some point, neither does he. That's why this shit he does is so funny. Like, I remember one time I picked him up, and in his pocket, he had, like, a big thing of lube. And in my car, while I'm driving him like, to wherever we go, and he literally takes out his dick and he starts lubing it up and jerking off in my car. And, of course, I'm like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Cut it out, stop it, whatever. I think at that time I was so desensitized to it, I just kind of let it go on. And, and with him, you could tell he just did it to get a rise out of you at first. Like, this guy's lubing up his cock and jerking off right now. But it's funny because I would kind of let it play out because I'm like, all right, well, he's not really getting a boner. So I know he's not like really trying to, and, but that's when you knew he was kind of doing it to get a laugh out of you or get a rise out of you. But then again, like you said, he'd be really trying. Like he was trying to jerk off. Like,
He didn't have, it's weird because his punchlines were with his body and never his words.
Right.
Because he would always just like take out his, but it was just the perfect timing. And what I think he did is that he gave us stories that would not only make, like, it's weird because we look back fondly on this guy just being naked all the time and jerking off. And if there was any other person doing that, if, like, let's just say if that was the first time he did that, like you met him, you're hanging out, and then that was the first time he ever saw his penis and he started lubing up in your car, you probably would have never have seen him again.
Well, I still think there's going to be, like, people who hear that and think, oh, man, that's fucked up. And they're, like, still, like there's no justification for being a fuck, naked and jerking off in front of somebody. And but that's the thing, is that you don't know. I guess you wouldn't know that until you met Jonas, I guess.
There'd be times even we would be at Moon and he would be completely naked, no shoes or socks on or anything, and he would just lay on the bench and start jerking off. And I remember me, you, and some of the other members of the group, we would just be casually talking as if this happened all the time, which it did. So it was so weird that it just became we became so desensitized to it. But at the end of the day, I've never met another person who just openly did that. They don't even do that in porn.
No, I don't know if you could get away with that shit nowadays with the cell phones and everything.
No.
I don't think you could, but back then it was like the Wild West, I guess.
If there's any like young millennials listening to this who grew up within a cell phone age, remember, like, before cell phones, that's what we did to have fun. We just took out our dicks in public and pissed. And I have actually seen I haven't even seen this in porn. I have seen Jonas's asshole, like, up close, personal, and like even the insides of it. I've seen this guy take a shit just in the open, like, just casually. I've seen him piss. I've seen him shit. I've seen him jerk off. I haven't even seen myself do that in the mirror. But I saw him, and this was just all the time. I don't think I've ever seen him use the bathroom.
Yeah, like, just no. And when he would leave it in there for the next person because he thought that was funny.
Every single fucking time, dude. And I don't know when or how I got used to it, or thinking just like it's really hard to describe, because somebody who wasn't part of that, it's kind of, the way I see it is there's different rules for driving on different roads. So, for instance, if you're driving around your subdivision, the speed limit's 25. But when you're on the highway, people are allowed to go 90 miles an hour. And that was the road that we were driving on. And it was just us. And literally one day, the big group, we were going to Glencoe Beach.
Oh, yeah.
Driving down the highway. And we actually have this recorded on camera. Jonas pressed his lower body out the car window, and he just started jerking off, like, with his dick out of the car window, going like at least 80 miles an hour down Grand Avenue. And
at one point, I think he just let it just flap for a while.
It was flapping like doggy ears.
Yeah.
So
that was an iconic memory there, because I think that was like one of the best days of the summer. It was that day we actually snuck into Glencoe Beach. Do you remember that?
Yeah, we did.
It was closed, and we had went all that way, and we were not going to be denied. I remember sneaking in there, and we were hiding from cops and everything. I did that with Adam once too. We did the same thing, snuck in there. It's we went in the water and everything. We were all scared, ooh, cops, but it was so fun.
Yeah, during that time, Jonas was completely naked swimming too, and he jumped off of the pier,
That's
and
right.
It was shallow water, and he kind of fucked up his ankle because he landed on the rocks.
That's
but
right.
That didn't stop him or slow him down one bit, and he's like, oh, come on, and it's okay.
Yeah.
So I remember, like, kind of going back into the story. You did mention earlier how we called it the family.
Yeah.
And that's how, we're not saying that it was a family. The name of the group was the family. And we each started out with, like, just a very few amount of members. So I remember it was first between you and Jonas.
Right.
And then I can't remember if I was the third person or a guy named Charles was the third person.
It was Charles.
Charles was the third person. Yeah. So describing Charles, Dane Cook does a bit in his stand-up comedy routine. I think it's Vicious Circle, where he says everybody has a friend in their group that nobody likes. Charles was this guy.
Yes.
So to give you a kind of a short descriptor of Charles, he was a big, stocky guy, a little bit younger than us, like short, reddish hair. He spoke very smugly almost all of the time.
He was articulate. He was.
Yeah, very articulate, but as if he was trying to sell you something every time that he spoke to you, even if it was just like off the cuff about McDonald's or something. If you guys have seen the movie Scent of a Woman, he comes off as Philip Seymour Hoffman's character in that movie, but more pretentious. So I remember the first night I met Charles, we were at your house, and he came over, and I would, said, "Hey, how you doing?" And then he said, "Oh, hey, do you smoke?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Oh, so you're one of those faggots."
I'll never forget that.
Me neither. And I've actually hated him ever since.
Yeah, that was the worst way to introduce you guys.
Yeah, so he was around a lot. He wasn't there every single night, but he was there often enough to where, he was part of the group. And I remember the first night that I was initiated into the family. I remember Jonas and I were having kind of a deep conversation about life, and it was just me and him onto the side, and then I think you and Charles were talking and smoking cigarettes somewhere in Moon, and then I was just on the bench with Jonas, and I can't remember what we were talking about. Perhaps something about women or something with life. I can't remember, but I remember I peeled off I broke off the tab of the Arizona green tea can, and I gave that to him kind of as a sentiment, and he actually really took that to heart at the time. And then I remember later on that night, you called me into Jonas's bedroom when we were in the basement, just chilling out playing video games.
Oh yeah, it was very serious business.
It was very serious business. Yeah. And then Jonas, extended his hand out and he said, "Welcome to the family."
Right.
And then he just crippled my hand lovingly. And then without skipping a beat, he looked at you and he said, "Hey Joe, is this something on my ass?" And then he pulled down his pants and then he showed you his ass. I think he was asking if there was a pimple on his ass, and you were like, "No man, there's nothing on your ass." And he just put his ass away and he's like, "Okay." So it's a very serious moment, but I just remember that being accompanied with just seeing Jonas's ass, and I wasn't even shocked. It was just, okay, that's just part of how it is. And then
it was, we were almost in a gay relationship. I would say it was that. We were best friends to the point of it was pretty gay. He would give me back massages. Yeah. But I guess I was the top, I guess, because I wouldn't give him back massages. He would just give me back massages. So.
But he was such an alpha male in his own right.
Oh God, he was. Yeah, I mean,
he never just gave a shit, but that never defined his sexuality.
No.
I remember there'd be some nights he would really fuck with us. He would just start making out with our necks.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then nobody lasted more than a few seconds because he was doing it too sensually.
He really meant it.
Yeah,
except for Adam though, he could take it.
Yeah, so Adam was the fifth member of the group. Adam is Adam is Filipino as well. At the time, just picture Tommy Chong. He was just very chill and laid back. He had long hair. Adam was one of the wilder kids in high school, but he was one of the funniest people I've ever met. However, Adam was very deep and very introspective and very philosophical. But at the same time, he was just a very chill person. His neuroticism was probably at 0. I would say out of the group, he was the most chill one of them all. Whereas the rest of us at the time, I would say we were all the class clowns in high school, and we were all the kids at the high school lunch table. There was the jocks, there was the geeks, there was the nerds, there was the chicks, and there was the cheerleaders, and then there was our table, and we were just funny people. All of us were just deeply funny. Charles, not so much. He occasionally would say jokes, but because of his just natural delivery, they never worked. So, but he was still an integral part of the group because he balanced all of us out.
I would say that the main part of it's when you're talking about the class clowns and how we all really connected, it was me, Jonas, you, and Adam for sure. And I remember always just collaboratively we just had the best conversations, and even just beatboxing freestyle sessions. That was always our thing.
Some of the best memories I had was me, you, and Jonas, Jonas, and Adam, just any combination of us four. We would just start beatboxing, and then Adam was amazing at freestyle rapping. He would just make shit up, and he had this one line, this one song where he was just A minus, minus, but he would just build on it from there. And I remember one of the last lines that he said, he was something, well, I'm tickling your armpit, and it fucking just blew everybody away. But we would just naturally come together as if we were just musicians in a way, because we all just had this beatbox. We all got why that shit was so cool and so funny, and we did it all the time. And that was just easily one of the funnest things that we did. And Jonas would beatbox naked too. It just didn't matter. So
You see now, I think where Adam comes in is, like you said, he was that, Jonas was wild, I would say. Well, Adam was a free spirit, I would say. Probably one of the most free-spirited people I know. I mean, he just goes, like you said, his level of serenity is at a 10. He doesn't let the any kind of problems or what's going on outside his life affect his mood ever. I don't think I've ever seen him distressed.
me neither. Adam's the type of guy where you can just not talk to him for a long time, for years, and then not only does it not bother you, but when you start speaking again, it picks up just right where you left off. And I remember at the time, Adam, like I really connected with Adam because he didn't do drugs or smoke as well.
Right.
Whereas everybody else in the group, like you guys definitely, you guys smoked weed and then you smoked cigarettes. But with Adam, like I
think
didn't
more
have
later
that.
on we've smoked the weed, yeah.
Yeah, I would say like in the later years, but
Yeah.
that first summer it was definitely more of just like walking around and having the cigarettes.
Right.
So, of course, after that we would, especially when the winter time came, we still hung out, though it wasn't as frequent as it was in the summer because the weather was just the nicest place to bring us together. We would still go to Jonas's basement, and we would still play video games and hang out and chill. We would do our own things. I remember, I think, definitely me and you were in community college and we were taking classes, so we had other responsibilities. I remember you had work as well, and you were in a relationship at the time, so just doing all of that other stuff on the side. But with me, I just save those activities for the summer. So I remember with Jonas, I wasn't really personally close with him like I am close with you. So I think like you were much closer with Jonas, but like when we all got together, like I got to know like a much different side of him. And like you said, he did have this side where he was deeply introspective and he would always like contemplate his future. And sometimes he would have a lot of moments where he was just like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. And he just was trying to figure it out. And we kind of saw him he did figure out his life in a way, like as we saw it unravel as much as we were trying to figure out, his. So
I think it has to be said as well that Jonas is a phenomenal chef. He wanted to be a chef for as long as before I've known him. He wanted to be a professional chef, someday open his own restaurant. So, you fast forward, 10 years later, he went to the culinary school in Chicago, CHIC. He got his degree over there. He worked a couple of big hotels, Four Seasons, Trump Hotel, places like that. And then he ended up moving to California and he got a job at the French Laundry, which is like a world-renowned restaurant. So he did he always had that goal, and he did, he's on the way to making it happen. So I will say that is for as much as we were messing around and stuff like that, he was probably the only one out of all of us who had like drive to do a specific thing.
I would definitely agree because Jonas was one of the most driven guys I have ever met, and his work ethic was second to none. And I really envied that about him and tried to figure that out, how he just didn't let any social constraint hold him back, yet he was able to find success out of that. And, that was something that I always like quietly admired about him.
I agree. And I always admired that about him, and the fact that he could do anything he put his mind to. And I know that's one of the most generic, corny things you could say about anybody, right? But with him, it was true because you would see, I remember he would like, oh yeah, I want to learn Stairway to Heaven on guitar. He has no guitar experience. The dude in 2 days is playing the song. I was playing piano at that time, and I was getting pretty good. And just because he wanted to learn how to play Clair de Lune, which is a very famous, difficult piano piece. And he was doing it. Within a couple of days, he was doing it. Not the whole thing, but like I said, this guy he could have done whatever he wanted in terms of, talent. But he was also the kind of guy who could waste time. He could waste time like nobody else I knew. He's the type of guy where you just drop him off somewhere and he has an adventure. He's coming out of there with 3 new friends, that he never even met before then. He's that type of guy. We would take the same car to CLC. I drop him off. Every time he'd have some new girl with him or somebody, some new story. And it was just, that was the type of guy he is. Just wherever he goes, he's almost like a magnet.
He really got that much out of life, and I think he really brought that out of us, and he really brought that out of the family. So when me and you do talk about this subject, which is very often on our own, we always go back to the stories that we remember just about Moon and just about Jonas. So I guess what are some of your favorite stories that you can think of?
Well, I remember the Glencoe was great, and I think too, more than just specific memories, I think, as a sum, just that camaraderie at Moon and all those different spots was really where I cherish the times. But if I'm just thinking off the top of my head, the time where he was, we had it on film, and where he was in the straw hat and he was naked and he had a butcher knife and he was tucking his penis behind his legs. And he was doing all kinds of outrageous stuff, and we were just laughing. I mean, I couldn't tell you, if I've ever laughed that hard.
That was and that was a typical night for Jonas, but
Right.
because we recorded it, it was so much more funnier and it was disturbing. And I was there too, and I filmed him. I remember I got a close-up shot of him lubing up his dick. And then Chris was with us too. He wasn't part of the family. He was just an occasional, like he would come in and out. So it was just me, you, Jonas, Chris, and your girlfriend, and we were just in the basement. And then Jonas is just doing all this shit. And then he just started lubing up his cock. And then he started jerking off. And then I remember Chris took the knife and was just kind of like grazing the top of his dick with the knife.
Yeah, it was pretty bizarre stuff.
It was very bizarre. Then he had like that the straw hat on, and he did the most perfect Raiden impression from the Mortal Kombat movie, still to this day, where he walked out and he just went, "Enough!"
It was so dead on. I don't think we caught it back in the day, but me and Brent watched it about a year ago, I'd say, and we caught that, and it just, I mean, I was dying, dude. I can't tell you the last time I laughed that hard.
And the funny thing was, his dad would usually be sleeping on the couch in the living room.
Oh, his dad.
Right near the stairs that led down to his basement. So no matter what, the only thing I would say I hated about hanging out in Jonas's basement was no matter what, his dad would always find a way to sleep on the couch downstairs, and we couldn't make any noise whatsoever. So Jonas would, he would laugh loud.
He had a hearing problem as well.
Yeah, so oh God, I totally forgot about that.
Right, so you always had to be extra loud with him.
So that's how he would like sneak up taking out like your dick when you didn't know it. Is like he would get, "Can you say that again?" And then he would lean his ear towards you, and then you're just kind of explaining it slower so he could get it. And then like the next thing you know, your zipper's down. You're like, "What the fuck happened?" Or then like he'll just start pissing like as you do that. But I remember like there was a few times that we played hide and seek in his basement in the complete darkness, trying to fumble around, and so I think he was naked during that time too. But I really can't tell you the times where he was clothed. I really can't.
How about you, man? Any specific times that you remember, aside from like the first time we hung out with him and stuff?
I remember when the group got bigger, we would do more important things, or not important things, but we would just do more diverse things. I would say just like as a whole, one of the characters who wasn't even part of the group but was really cool to the group was a police officer.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not going to say his name, but he was actually like the coolest cop. Because people would actually call the cops on us almost every other time we were outside because we were loud, we were rambunctious and laughing. So,
and God forbid we play a game of doorknob.
Oh my God. Okay, describe doorknob.
Okay, so for anybody who doesn't know what doorknob is, it's so you fart, right? Let's say you fart. Okay, so now the game of doorknob, you have to say safety as soon as you fart. If you don't say safety, if you don't say safety, somebody could say doorknob, and then they would literally be allowed to punch the shit out of you until you touch a doorknob. So that's how you play doorknob. Okay, so now we should have mentioned this from the beginning. We were always playing doorknob with Jonas. It never ended with him. It was 24/7, all the time, living in fear of doorknob. So if you farted, you were on that shit, like, safety. No matter what, you would say safety. And people who weren't playing are like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like, dude, just trust me. So sometimes when we were out, somebody would fart outside and Jonas would call doorknob on you. So you're literally like running for the closest door, like opening some like random slide or like random screen door and then touching some random house's door. Like at 12 o'clock at night because Jonas called doorknob on you.
Yeah. I remember one time he, like we were at Moon and he just casually took a shit, like a very... like Mr. Hanky, like fucking candy bar shit, and he just let it there. And then literally 1 minute later, the police officer came and was just looking around, but the cop didn't say anything about it.
He thought it was a dog shit.
He thought it was a dog shit. And then like 2 minutes before that, Jonas, like I think he only had boxers on, and then he was just there, completely fucking like in his boxers, and the cop was just telling us, to, keep it down or whatever. But I remember. Some of like the deepest connections that I had with you guys was when you smoked weed. Not when I smoked weed, because I didn't. But I remember when you guys smoked weed, you were a lot more philosophical. Not only that, but I really catered and played into all of your individual senses of humor.
Oh, I remember that.
I remember like I would just make monster noises, or I would just do random things. I remember I had a sound effect of like a horse galloping, and
my favorite was when you would do the samurai on the horse.
Yeah. So pretty much I would just speak Japanese gibberish like but when they're high, like when people are high, that shit's a lot funnier. And I remember Jonas would like there was one time I can't remember, maybe it was Dro. I don't remember the name of it. It was something that was legal in Wisconsin at the time, and Salvia. So Jonas got some salvia, and this was around the time The Dark Knight came out, and I remember he took a hit or two off of this, and then his mouth was really dry, and then he just kept talking like the Joker the whole time. He's like, "Let's put a smile on that face." So, it's really hard to just pick one memory because it was just it was a routine. So it's like pick your favorite day of your routine. Like pick your favorite day you brushed your teeth.
The whole time was amazing, and I think that's why we can't really single out too many specific memories. I mean, I'm sure if there was like a journal log of, okay, on this day we did this, I'd be like, oh, that fucking day, that was such a great day, and so on for every day. But as time goes on, you just kind of remember it collectively.
There's one memory that I have in particular. It was me, you, Jonas, Charles, and I think your girlfriend and her friend were there as well. Jonas and Charles went walking on their own, and in one of the little houses, there was a Russian family there was like a Russian guy that was just walking around, and he actually invited Jonas and Charles inside of their home.
He was pretty drunk too.
Yeah, so they were just like everyone was like kind of drunk at this point, so it was a long time had passed. So we had no idea where the fuck they were. And I remember
they weren't answering their phones.
And then Charles finally, maybe after a half an hour, maybe 45 minutes an hour, texted you back, and he just kept texting you cryptic things such as don't come, be safe.
Right.
So I don't know all of the details that went on in the house, but from what I understand, the Russian guy was pretty much forcing them to drink vodka. And then they got really drunk. And then they said the Russian guy wanted to take them down into the basement, and as soon as they got into the basement, things got really weird. Like his mood changed, and they were trying to find a way to get out of the house. So me, you, and the rest of the group were just there looking for Jonas, and I think we were making up things like, dude, yeah, we got to go home, we got to do this, we got to do that. And the Russian guy would not fucking let them go.
Oh my God, I remember this, man.
Dude, whatsoever. He wouldn't let them go, and we were there for at least a half an hour. We didn't fight or anything.
No, and the guy wasn't being like malicious, like, fuck you, you're not going anywhere. He was just like insisting that they didn't leave.
Yeah, and they were, I think Jonas had a few shots of vodka at this point, and Charles was a little fucked up too.
Yeah.
So I remember we tried to...
We were underage too at this time, I think.
Oh yeah, totally. So there was a point where we didn't know how to fucking get them out of the house, and we weren't about ready to fight. We didn't have any weapons, and we didn't... I don't think it wasn't even an option to call the police at that time.
No, we were kind of intimidated by the Russian guy, I remember, because he had his wife with him too, remember? She was feisty.
Yeah, she was feisty. So picture like this Russian dude, like he looked like a middle-aged, like shaved head, tough Russian guy in like these action movies. So like picture like Daniel Craig with a shaved head, and he like he had on just like a loose like Cub shirt or whatever and loafers, but he was very like no, you have to stay here today. And then when you guys finally left, when they finally left, like we were just like holy shit, like we just escaped evil.
Yeah,
like some really fucked up shit could have happened. That memory always stuck with me, and there was one time where Moon was kind of disbanded, and it was one time it was me, you. And your girlfriend and her friend were hanging out at Gazebo, and this was like maybe 1 or 2 in the morning. And one of the neighbors was out. Like the way the subdivision was set up, there were townhomes with garages, and he was chilling outside of his garage.
Joseph Dornick.
I
don't give a fuck if I give that cocksucker's name out.
Yeah, Joseph Dornick. So we were just chilling, just doing our thing, and then he approached us and he said, "Do you guys live here?" And he's like, "No, our friend lives down the street." And then he just said, "Get the fuck out of here." We're like, "Wait, what are you talking about?" He said, "Get the fuck out of here right now. Get the fuck out of here."
He had been drinking as well.
Yeah, he was definitely very drunk.
Yeah.
He was like a very mean, incoherent drunk.
Right.
So as we were leaving and going back to our cars, he followed us and kept saying, "Get the fuck out of here."
And his friend started coming too. He had a friend who was coming behind him asking for my ID.
Yeah, and then like the friend like kind of like manhandled you for a while, because I remember that you handed him your wallet and then he like slapped it out of your hand and kind of pushed you around.
Yeah, he pushed me and he grabbed my wallet, and at this point I wasn't even thinking about fighting the guy. I was very confused because he said that he was an off-duty cop, something to that extent. Let me see your ID. So I'm like, what the fuck's going on? Do I fight with this guy? And they called the cops on us. Remember, we were trying to leave and they called the cops on us, and the cops got there. They were doing their job very well. They assessed the situation very quickly and arrested those 2 assholes.
Yeah, because what happened was Joseph touched one of the cops,
right.
And when there's because the guy called the cops on us, and he was saying that there's 4 people here that are refusing to leave,
right?
And your girlfriend was screaming in the background because the guy just wouldn't stop. She's like, "We are going back to our fucking cars," and then he kept holding the phone out to like catch our audio, so. And as soon as the cops came, he went up to the cop and he just started, like, he put his hand on the cop and the cop just dragged this asshole down.
Right.
I think they took care of the friend as well. And then there was another guy that got arrested.
They told the friend to get down. They told him to get down and lay down. And, yeah, they knew that we were being harassed right away.
Yeah, and like we got that on the ground too, and I was like, it was me, like we were all sitting on the curb at that point, and I just didn't say shit because I've dealt with a lot of cops up until that point in my life, and I'm like, you just fuck it. Like if they say get on the ground, get your ass on the ground, especially when like there's like a panic going on. But then once the dust settled, they took those 2 guys away in the cop car, and I think there was another guy that got arrested too. But
I'm not sure. I know it was the 2 guys, but I think the Dornick guy is the only guy who got charged with anything.
Yeah, so then we went to court.
That's right.
And then I remember the cops
saw him there, too.
Yeah, the cops called our homes, and at this point I didn't have a cell phone, so the cops called my house and was asking for information, so I came into the police station, and they sat me down in a room, and they just had me describe what happened, and I told them honestly what happened, and then, but they didn't care about that. Apparently there's another guy on there who was fucking around with the cops, and he put in a complaint saying that he was mishandled. And I filled out a form saying I don't know who the fuck this guy is or what they're talking about.
I had to do the same thing.
Yeah, so eventually we did go to court, the 4 of us, and he tried to defend himself in court.
He didn't feel bad about anything, man.
He's like, "No, they wouldn't fucking leave," and they told us to leave. So then we were very calm and everything, and then the judges ruled in our favor. Or I don't know.
They did, yeah.
Yeah, they ruled in our favor, but it wasn't like us versus them. It was pretty much like him or not him. And like we were like the witnesses that were like on the police's case, and we were like, yeah, this guy was the biggest asshole, so he ended up paying a fine and whatever. So
I don't think he really got in trouble. He just had to pay a fine and get a ticket or something.
Yeah.
But he was a major asshole. I mean, looking back on it, if I knowing what I know now, I probably would have punched the guy,
Yeah.
But he was a big guy, but he was drunk and he was silly,
Yeah, it really didn't. Like, if he just said, get the fuck out of here, okay, you're being an asshole, but if that was just the end of
he
it,
followed us.
He followed us all the way to the car. So we walked for about 5-10 minutes, and then he followed us to our cars and called the police on us.
As we were trying to leave, doing what he said, yeah.
Yeah, and then that kind of ruined Moon, at least the outside location, for a while, because he was still there. And, but all of the other times, like, living up to that were just very, treasured and very, valuable.
I also have to say, Jonas was gone at that time, I believe. He was living in Wisconsin.
I think so.
Either that or it was the first time he went to California. So yeah, Moon wasn't the same place to begin with. And also, that definitely ruined it for a while. And think until Jonas came back like a year later.
Yeah, it really, because we had this point in our lives, but we all came together and we all had these special personalities. So I would say that you were more the well-rounded one, like you were philosophical, but you also like fucked around.
We were all hilarious.
We were all hilarious. We all like brought this like funny shit to the table. I was a lot more quiet back then. I'm not like I am now, where I would be more of a performative extrovert, right. But I definitely wouldn't take out my dick anytime soon. But I was more the quiet one. Charles was the douche, and then Adam was like the very chill one.
You could say he was almost hippie-like.
Yes, Adam.
Like a drifter kind of dude.
Yeah, he just came there and he made those times, and we had some of the deepest conversations, and those were on tape as well. I remember you had a camera at one point, and you went around and you asked everybody like what their take on like masculinity was, or
some of that's really embarrassing for me.
Oh yeah, me too. Every time I watch that, I just kind of cringe.
Yeah.
But there were some more funny moments on camera, so. But I tried bringing a few other friends to that place, but it just didn't feel the same.
And I had been there as well, with me and my ex-girlfriend Liz, because she was part of that time too. And it just never was the same. Me and her would go there, like just me and her, because Jonas was gone or whatever. And the thing happened with you, so you didn't want to go. And it just was never the same. It was never the same. But I have since gone by myself once in a while. And it still has that really reflective feel. And every time you go at night, especially like, I think we were talking about me and you going this summer at nighttime and just seeing how it goes.
We did go, I remember, like a couple years ago, and we parked in the same spots that we used to park at, but now...
We got a ticket.
Yep, it's permit only. So, and I remember I had to spend $25. I couldn't get out of that one. So, I'm thinking that without those times, I probably wouldn't be the person I am today, not necessarily because I inherited my values and my perspective from there, but because I was able to live that part of my youth and really say that, what did I do between the ages of 18 and 21? I fucked around. I didn't have any responsibilities. For me personally, I just, lived out what I thought, being young was. There was no girls. There was definitely crushes, of course. They come and gone. But Moon was the place that we would go to, and we would just really hash out, just all of the intricacies of maturing and coming into our own. So
I couldn't agree more. And, when you say how, like, it was a place to hash things out, I remember no matter how bad things got and, oh, my parents are mad at me. Oh, I got a bad grade on this test, or, my work's going to fire me. Whatever it is, you could go there and it was like a commune. And somebody could be playing music on their iPod. And, this was, like I said before, the smartphones. And we would and it was okay. Once you were there, we were all there, it was okay. You felt better. Like it was somehow, now it was more manageable. And becoming part of that, like you said, for me, you wouldn't be the same person. Neither would I. That was such a passionate, fiery time in my life. There was love. There was, not so much heartbreak, but, the pains of love, let's say, that come with it. And, hardcore friendships being made, lifelong friendships being made at that time. And, it stays with you. It's something I'll never forget. And no matter like what kind of times I experience in my life, I don't think anything could really come close to topping that specific, time in our lives where, we were maturing and free, and like it was almost like the world, was so filled with so much potential. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but
it does. So do you mean kind of like we just, because we felt that feeling of infinity, it kind of matched the times that we had?
yes.
So, because we would just go out, we would fuck around every night, we'd have fun, go back home, rinse and repeat. So there's really nothing else more to it than that. And I think we did that at a time where we were able to do that. And there was no other time in history that we probably could have had that much fun. And it was right before the technology. And so those are all before social media too. So
MySpace was the newest thing, I remember. It was like, I remember hanging out with Charles once, and this was like later in the timeline, but he had a Razor flip phone. Remember those?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, dude, I can get the MySpace notifications on my phone. And it was like the fucking most amazing thing ever, And now the phones out now are like probably 100 times more powerful than a computer back then.
Yeah.
So
far and away, and we weren't even on our phones. Like, there was nobody down just looking at the phones. We all just interacted with each other. We all communicated, and we all just spent hours of our lives.
You know what? I don't think that gets enough credit.
No, it doesn't,
because things are so much different now with the phones. And I mean, I hate to blame it all on that, but it's true. The technology and the phones and the social media, 100% different, because we weren't sitting around taking pictures of shit, sharing it with other people. It was just us, and it was just that special time with just us.
I think at the end of the day, what we all were trying to do was craft our own idea of a home. So we actually, just looking back, we had the family. We had people that we were very close with. Like, I knew every minute detail of Jonas's life during those 3 years, whether I wanted to or not. I know what he was working. I knew where he was working. I knew who he had crushes on. I knew
what time he took a shit.
Most of the time, because he did it right in front of me.
Or he'd call you on the phone and put the phone right by his asshole. That was another thing he liked to do.
Yeah. So I've seen I've seen every scratch, scrape, bruise, boil, zit, wart, fucking abscess on this guy's penis, balls, everything. So and that was kind of how, nobody knew him our other dicks looked like, but we just knew what we were doing, and no matter what, there were times in when things got heated between us, just about everybody in the group maybe had a little bickering here and there.
Sure. I remember most of it was Charles.
Most of it was Charles.
Yeah.
But we, kind of like how a family should be, we were able to just come back and be okay, let's just still go hang out and go to Moon.
There's honestly the more you sit here and think, and the more you go back, the more crazy stories and stuff that just starts coming in, because we really did, we hung out so often that the stories are just there's so many. It
was very rare to where we just had a very normal and boring day where nothing happened, to where, Jonas didn't do something crazy, or maybe we just watched movies or played video games and that was it. Or even if that's all you did, you remember those memories too, because you'd play the video game all day.
Right.
Or you just do this thing all day or all night, and then I would come home sometimes when the sun was coming up. I remember a few times coming home so late, and then we all just parted ways, and those were some of the best days of my life. And I think it's because we really did have that place. That was a place called Moon, and that was our home, and nobody else could take that away from us. Because I remember last year, me and you went and revisited Moon, and we were sitting down. It was during the day, which is really weird. So there was P-Wall was still there. There was no green tea cans in the bushes, so there was
a bee's nest too.
There was a bee's nest, and I remember somebody carved on the bench, "This is our place," and I knew, it
wasn't us.
It wasn't us, but I understand their sentiment. But it's not their place. It was ours.
It was,
because we really made it what the fuck that place was, and up until the very end. And the reason why the family disbanded and those times that Moon ended was because Jonas moved to California. And I remember it was the night of probably the second presidential debate in 2008 between John McCain and Obama. And I remember it was that night when that happened. So
it was a great night.
It was a great night. It was a really nice farewell to Jonas. And
everybody was there. Jonas made the most amazing cheesecake. if you remember that.
Yeah, I think he made curry that was really good too,
Yeah.
and he made some noodles. He made all kinds of great shit, but that was just the things that he did. So we have pictures from that night as well. But that really was the last day, and it was kind of like the really coming full circle. Like we kind of said goodbye to our youth in a way that night because that was the last time we all just hung out as a group. There was a family reunion 4 years ago where Jonas came back for a little bit, and then we all went to the park, and Adam was there, like your now ex was there. I was
actually
there.
orchestrated the whole thing. God bless her soul. Yeah.
Oddly enough, but it was weird doing that as an adult, but
I think we all were very happy to be in each other's presence again.
We were.
Like, even if we weren't having the greatest time, it was still fun. We played some cards, we ate some food, we went back to my place. It was cool,
It was because we really got a taste of what those times were like again, and we can never relive them again, because it would be weird if just a 32-year-old guy would take out his dick as a joke. I don't think anybody could get away with that now, and it would just be a little disturbing now.
Or even just two 31-year-old men walking around at 1 o'clock in the morning, you know what I mean, just with no agenda, is just, you can't get away with that shit anymore.
Yeah.
So.
We're too enveloped in our own responsibilities now, and that was a period of time in our lives where we didn't have any responsibilities. Even if you had to work a part-time job or pay a phone bill, or you had someplace to be maybe the next day, or you had to go on vacation with your family, those were insurmountable, or those weren't anything compared to the insurmountable responsibilities that we have now, like, with families. And everybody from the group grew up in their own way, Jonas is now living in California, and he's a chef. Adam is doing his own thing in Georgia, and he just got engaged. What have you been doing what have you been up to since then?
I work, and I have an almost 2-year-old son now named Owen. So yeah, it's like you said, we all kind of grew up in a way, and I think it should go to say it should count for something that I did kind of keep the family together a little bit after Jonas left, but it changed. New characters came into play, like Steve and Robin, even Cass, and the family did kind of change, but it was never like the same thing. And instead of going over to Jonas's house all the time, it was my house, and we were getting older too, so I think, it was more like about, drinking and partying. And let's just say this, how about Guitar Hero?
We've played so many goddamn matches, well, not matches, but songs on Guitar Hero, and
I think after Jonas left, that's the only thing we did.
Yeah, that was the only thing we became really addicted to. So it kind of reminded me of DX. So like the original family was like Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and Chyna, and then when Shawn Michaels left, then you got Billy Gunn, Road Dogg, X-Pac, that's kind of how it felt, and then like you were kind of like Triple H,
right?
It was a different type of fun to be had, but we just stuck with, in each other's basements as opposed to going outside to Moon. But it's not that the fun was any worse. It was still a lot of fun, but it was different because we were becoming older, and like the fun that we had was really changing. So it just felt like it was a period of time that had to pass. It was like a TV show that had to end at one point in time.
It was. I mean, it had to. There's nothing, nothing lasts forever. And I think what made it so special is it was like, the original. It was the one and only time, when things were like that. And, you can have similar situations. You can have different groups of friends and everything. But really, like that time, that place, those people, that's what it was all about.
Really was what it's all about, and you're probably the only one that I've stayed in contact with out of anybody in the family. Yeah,
me and you are still pretty close, very close, and I see you all the time. Jonas lives in California, but I still talk to him regularly. I know I didn't really mention this, but me and Jonas, we always called each other brother, and like, kind of goes with the whole family thing. It's always been that way between me and him. And me and him decided early on in our friendship, like, hey, this, we're going to be friends for life. And the same goes with Adam. I still talk to him regularly, and like you three, you guys will always because of not just because of that time, but you guys are like my best friends, and you guys will always have a place in my life. Not to get all sappy, but yeah, that's the truth. I mean, others, they come and go. Like, I see, Steve and Robin and stuff. Charles, we kind of had a falling out. But still, Charles was part of that time too. So he had, a lot of good memories, but yeah.
But yeah, so if you are young and listening to this, you got to have time in your life where you fuck around. And, I think that's just being an adult now made those times so much more special, because while we were living them, I didn't consciously know that, oh my God, these times are going to mean so much to me in the future. It happened when I started really reflecting on them, like the older I got and the more, like once I started working 2 jobs and I really didn't have anything to look forward to outside of a school semester and that structure. And now that I have to plan for the future, and I look back on all those times, and I was just like, I would just kill to have one more carefree day like that, but I can't. Even on my days off, I have to do something small. I have to clean my room. I have to make some calls to bill collectors, or I have to do something to keep my responsibility up. Whereas back then I had absolutely none. But it really, it really was part of like the fondest memories that I'll ever have in my life.
So yeah, when looking back, like you said, fucking around, having those carefree times, we could have been doing something a lot more productive with our time, and I acknowledge that looking back, I could have been way more serious about a career or school or whatever, but I would never trade it for anything. I would never trade those memories, those times I had with people to do things differently. I just wouldn't, no matter how much more advantageous it would be to me. That's how much it means to me. So, like you said, just some of the best times of my life.
If there's anything I can say in summation, it would be that it was the first and only time in my life where I wasn't planning for the future. I was genuinely living in the present.
I would agree with that.
And I want to say, man, thank you for all those times. And to Jonas's penis.
Yeah, we had Jonas's penis, definitely. He was probably, he was the true leader of the family.
The penis, and then Jonas was like second in command.
Right.
So, but anyway, Joe, we just did about an hour and a half of podcast, and I really thank you for coming on this show.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
All right, so this has been Coffee and Catastrophe with Brent and Gabi, special guest starring Joe. So if you like this podcast, look us up on Facebook at Coffee and Catastrophe. Follow us on Twitter at CCWBG. We are also on iTunes, Coffee and Catastrophe. We are also on CastBox and Stitcher. So in the meantime, you guys go and reflect back on some of those good parts of your life. Take care and be good to each other. Goodbye.